So, after last week where we looked at the worst movies of the year, we're finally getting around to now looking at the best movies of the year. And again, 2024 was a real great year for movies. Honestly, I gotta say, this has probably been one of the best years for movies in recent memory. So, today we're gonna look at the things that I thought were really, really great and the ones I've really enjoyed the most. Today we're gonna look at the best movies of the year. Number 8, Wicked. Now, going into Wicked was an interesting one because I'd never seen the stage musical before, so I was going in pretty much blind other than the vague stuff I knew through osmosis. Watching the movie, I gotta say, I was really impressed. Obviously, the lead up, there was a lot of, not so much controversies, but silly things here and there with, that very famous, quite silly interview. But, just watching the movie as itself, it was really good. Again, it really reminded me of the sort of big grand musicals of the past when it came to cinema, and something that we haven't really gotten in quite a while in like a big mainstream musical movie. And I think that's it. I think my biggest thing I really liked was just how big in scope the whole thing felt. It really did feel like Oz was this big, large, like roaming world. Also, too, I thought it was a really interesting take on the Wizard of Oz, seeing it as this sort of oligarchical society where everything is being ruled by the wizard. He's not a great guy, and kind of seeing his influence ruin, I guess, the sort of what used to be the status quo for Oz. And I thought that was really interesting, persecuting all the people of Oz who didn't fit in with his sort of vision, and I thought that was really cool. And again, I gotta say, overall, as a musical itself, the musical numbers were extremely catchy. I knew of the Defying Gravity song, but I wasn't familiar with a lot of the other songs, and I gotta say, they were all really good and well written, and a lot of them are gonna stay in my head. I think especially that sort of opening number was just a really great way to open the musical. And again, I also just really like the characters in general. I thought they're all really compelling. I feel like Glinda was a character I worried was just gonna be a stereotypical, like, she seems nice but she's actually bad. She had a lot more depth in this kind of way where see what was good about her, but you could also see that at her heart, her biggest issue is that she cared more about how other people perceived her than actually standing for anything. And I thought that was quite interesting. And again, I think Elphaba, the sort of Wicked Witch in this version, just had a lot going on that I just, didn't expect to see. Like, it was a very sort of in-depth character, and I really enjoyed that. Overall, I thought it was a really pretty looking movie, and overall, I thought it was a really good musical. So if you are into musicals like I am, I recommend giving it a watch. Number 7, Humane. Humane is the directorial debut of David Cronenberg's daughter, and I gotta give it to her. She's really great, hitting it out the park with a really good first movie. Essentially, Humane is set in a future where overpopulation has gotten extremely bad, and the ecological effects of that many people is pretty much dooming the world as it is these days. So in this future, they've enacted a program where essentially, if you volunteer, you can have yourself be euthanized in exchange for money. And of course, the whole movie kind of deals with the ethical implications of that. And it is so simple, yet that works to its benefit. A lot of this movie is just so tense because you just like never know where it's going to go. These characters are constantly at each other's throats, and I think that's what I really liked about it. It had really great acting from the main cast, and on top of that, really tight writing from the director of the film. So it literally did just feel I was just watching this really just like intense snapshot of a family in peril, and I think that's what made the movie really work. Like, it wasn't super grand, maybe compared to a lot of the others on my list, but I think it was just one of those really simple lowdown movies that was really effective and real creepy, but in a good way. Again, a big comfy Pongo recommend if you didn't get around to watching it. 6, Megalopolis. So, I know that obviously this is probably going to be one of the much more controversial ones on the list. A lot of people have it in their top movies, like me, and a lot of people have it in their bottoms. This is one of those loves from Francis Ford Coppola. Like, he had this in the works for so many years. He kept getting turned down. So to finally see it, like, on the big screen felt really great. And it just reminded me of his, like, Dracula movie and how it felt like one of these last of the large-scale Hollywood films where there was just so much inventive stuff put in it and such an artistic flair that, again, you just really don't see these days. And I think what a lot of this comes down to, I just really like the story at the heart of it, as again, similar to a lot of movies recently, it was a great use of metaphor to kind of display downfall of our modern day society, juxtaposed with sort of the fall of Roman society, and sort of seeing how this sort of excess of capitalism, greed, and lack of care for the fellow man led to a crumbling society. So I thought that was really interesting. The amount of really cool hand-built sets in this movie and just sort of larger-than-life effects really did create, this kind of movie that I hadn't seen anything like in a while. Like, it did have this very campy Shakespearean quality. It felt very much like this sort of very classic theatrical stage play, and I thought that worked in the movie's favour. It had the source because of it. I really enjoyed it for that. I feel overall like its kind of whole basis felt a little too idealist for me personally. I do think maybe the ending should have been a bit more somber, but again, I understand that it is grand epic finale and this sort of positive message to go out on. While I may not have fucked with that too much, I really did enjoy the movie overall. And again, I thought it was a pretty good movie. You may not agree, but I really enjoyed it. Number 5, I Saw the TV Glow. A beautifully haunting, surreal horror drama from a director I'm not super familiar with. I was really just blown back by how good this was. It's a movie that really does deal with the sort of trans and queer experience like no other, and I think this is why it really did get super popular and why it has been just nothing but beloved, and I feel the same way. I really haven't seen anything touch on that sort of experience in such a raw way like this movie does. Like, it really does just use its basic premise and setup to evoke the horrors of just being able to be one's true self. As well, I really do just like the aesthetic of this movie too, which really does help bring everything together. It does just feel like this captivating snapshot of like late 90s TV, but again in this more sort of Lynchian way. Like if you mixed an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer with like Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway, it's really interesting like that. And again, I do feel that while it is pretty light on the horror, I will say that the moments of horror that do feature in the movie are really horrific and just so filled with sadness and dread that it really does creep you out in a way, but does just make you feel really down at times. And again, Justice Smith, in this movie, he absolutely just manages to just capture the emotion of this character down so well. And, just really gets across this person who's trying to hide something, while at the time just has these outbursts of just wanting to break free. And also it has Fred Durst in it, in a small role, but yeah. But yeah, this is just one of those really beautiful movies that the more and more I thought about it, just the more and more I like it. And again, I think it's going to stick with me for quite a while. And a really great movie that I really recommend you go out and watch if you've got the time. Number 4, Maxine. Now, I was a huge fan of Pearl, like most people out there. It was a really, really great sort of horror movie, but also sort of throwback to sort of 30s and 40s cinema that I just really enjoyed. But I sadly just wasn't that into X in comparison. It was a good movie, I guess, but it just felt too similar to a lot of other southern horror movies. But Maxine, I felt, was an absolutely stunning movie that, while I maybe didn't like as much as Pearl, I definitely would say it's pretty close. Like, it really did just have an interesting sort of scope in terms of its themes. Like, it sort of dealt with the prejudices faced by adult film stars in the world, and how, reclaiming oneself after surviving a traumatic situation and all the sort of issues that you face doing that and all the sort of problems you have. And I felt as a movie, because of that, it was really interesting. It was just really refreshing to see a horror protagonist reclaim their agency and become a much stronger person in the sequel. Again, it's something rarely seen, especially in slasher films. Like, even recently when we've had these sort of legacy sequels where they try and bring back an old character, it always feels like their agency doesn't really exist, where Maxine does not have this whatsoever. Maxine literally became a badass, and she was unwilling to suffer what she faced in the first movie again, and I felt that made her character a lot more compelling and a lot more interesting. And aesthetically as well, it just is a really pretty movie. Like, it looks so nice, and again, it really is this sort of mixture of grand Hollywood or Oso, like mixing in the sort of aesthetic of Giallo movies, and I think it's a really good match between the two. Just as always with all three of these movies, Mia Goth really does hit out of the park as Maxine, and the supporting cast is pretty good too, really just adding this sense of this kind of awful world that she has to participate in, but one that she can still strive and make headway in. So again, I really like Maxine, and I think if you enjoyed any of the other two movies, you should really give it a watch. 3. Alien Romulus. I already did a pretty in-depth review of this movie on my channel, and my opinions on it haven't super changed, so I'm not going to maybe talk as long about this movie as I did the other ones. A really great throwback to the sort of feel of the original Alien movie, and it dealt more with the corporate greed at the heart of the first two films than I think a lot of the later sequels ended up doing, and even the prequels. And again, it was just a really extremely tense horror movie filmed with some really amazing eye-catching scenes and some really new inventive ideas for the franchise. As well, it was a great way to kind of bridge the gap between the Alien franchise without feeling like too out there or too weird. As always, as many people said, the two main characters were extremely likable and they had really great chemistry, which made this movie really fly by and really like just engaging to watch. Again, a great Alien movie. If you haven't seen it, go give it a watch. Number 2, The Substance. Absolutely wow. You know, this is just an absolutely perfect movie that just appeals to every part of my being. An absolutely captivating like body horror film. You know, it's sort of message of dealing with like the fears of aging in a patriarchal dominated society where a woman's only like worth is her beauty and her youth. I think especially in the modern day where we see so much crap, stupid dude bros and mansford guys, it was really just great to see a movie use its like body horror premise to accurately just like show this. Like I've heard a lot of other reviewers sort of call scenes over the top or say that it was kind of exaggerated, but I do just feel that like overall, especially, you know, watching it with my wife and seeing a lot of other women talk about the movie online, the movie does just show you the real experiences of day-to-day women. The whole movie makes you feel just like Demi Moore's character. You're trapped in this world and you're so close to it and there's no way you can really get away because it keeps dragging you in further and there's no real escape from it no matter what you do. And again, even when some parts are exaggerated, like Margaret Qualley's dance show that she's on, I don't feel like it was that different from a lot of fitness and shows on TV that really do just feel like what the movie is presenting. Performance from Margaret Qualley especially, but also Demi Moore, are just fantastic. Like they really do just perfectly express not only the anger at the world that they live in, but also just like each other and how it's that thing of like, even though they know that the men in the world are the ones responsible for all of this, it's that issue where they'd rather attack each other because it's that one thing that they can do. Again, the effects are really great. Like most of the movie is pretty much practical. There are a couple bits of CGI here and there, but they couldn't really get around doing that. And especially right near the end of the movie, they really do just exacerbate like the horror of a lot of the scenes by just making them feel so much more visceral and horrific to watch. I recommend with my whole heart that you go watch this movie. Even if you don't like body horror, give it a watch. Number 1, Dune Part 2. We finally get to the end of the list and my favourite movie of the year. Dune is a great book, but I feel like end of the first book is always something that no matter what the adaptation is, they always seem to kind of mess up the landing on. Whereas this movie finally got it right in such a perfect way that it made me a very happy bunny. Near flawless movie to me, honestly. Lots of things that I liked that were taken out, or lots of bits that were taken out, I feel didn't need to be in the movie. Even though it was different adaptation, I have no issue with what they changed. It's that obviously in the book, Paul kind of goes from this good kid to essentially an evil genocidal dictator. This movie absolutely got it, not only due to great script writing, but Chalamet's performance. He's a really great actor in this movie. He really shows off his acting chops. So does pretty much everybody in this movie. Another standout too is Austin Butler as Fade Ruther. He really does just captivate this evil, horrible killing machine. Oh, so damn, this movie is pretty. Every shot can feel like this beautiful painting to look at. It feels like a lot of that classic sci-fi artwork has just jumped onto the screen. Huge recommend from me. I think this is the perfect adaptation of Dune as a book. I cannot wait for Dune Messiah. So with that, we bring the video to a close. And again, 2024 was just an amazing year for movies. And again, I really hope you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed the last one. If you like the video, remember to like the video. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. And hit the bell notification to get an update every time I load a new video. And with that, Comfy Pongo out. Guys, have an amazing weekend. I can't wait to see you again.